So this story caught my attention, and I am really concerned about what this means for the future of free speech, what it means for all of us in regards towards the right to protest, for civil, for the civil right to speak out against injustice, and I am worried about what it means in the end for third parties, independents, and anyone that wants to be a critical thinker. Because this did catch my attention. I want to give a huge shout out to Brianna Joy Gray, who I managed to see this. I managed to see this before, um, earlier today, before all this story broke down. But she tweeted out that Jill Stein had been charged, uh, unfortunately. And let me go and pull this up here. Let me go and pull up this article here instead, because this will explain a little bit more. Again, I'm very concerned about all of this. Jill Stein faces court date over Washington University protest charges. So let's get started with this. I want to give a huge shout out to Brianna Joy Gray that first captured this. So again, I'll be able to pull up the tweet in just a little bit. St. Louis County, former Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein and one other demonstrator were charged last week. This has happened March 19th. When this article came out, nearly a year after after 2024 on-campus demonstrations concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, court records show. Jill Stein, 72, and Jaron Hicks, a 25-year-old St. Louis man, were issued court summons on Friday. The charges stem from actions taken the day roughly 80 people were arrested, including then presidential candidate Jill Stein. Hicks faces 3 misdemeanor charges: first-degree trespass, assaulting a police officer, and resisting arrest. Stein was charged with first-degree trespassing and fourth-degree assault. In an email Wednesday, Chris Keene, a spokesman for St. Louis prosecuting attorney Melissa Price-Smith, said the office received 19 applications for charges in the case, but only Stein and Hicks were charged because they involved alleged assaults on law enforcement officers. King said the other 17 cases were referred to municipality court if the Washington University Police Department wanted to pursue charges. According to a criminal complaint from the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office filed Thursday, Hicks and Stein intentionally stayed on Washington U property despite being told to leave. The complaint against Hicks said he spat on a Washington University police lieutenant and wouldn't submit to being handcuffed, refusing to stand or walk while being detained. Charges documents accuse Stein of hitting a police officer with a bike during a struggle and kicking the officer multiple times in the right leg and groin. According to complaints against both Hicks and Stein, during a series of unregistered demonstrations on Washington University's Danforth campus, multiple protesters were arrested and several warnings were given, telling demonstrators they were in violation of university policies and directing them to leave campus. So before we continue on with the rest of the article, I want to pull up this tweet. This is from Jill Stein's own account. Again, what this means in the long run. Let's just go ahead and pull this up here. Let's pull this here. So this is a tweet from Jill Stein on May 2nd, 2024. In relation, before my arrest, my team and I were bruised and battered, thrown to the ground, and zip cuffed. This was not my first protest arrest, but it was unnervingly violent. The students are exercising their constitutional protected right to free speech expression at the risk of violation and injury from university authorities, police, and counter-protesters. If you have the opportunity to join an encampment near you, please do so. That's what she says. So let's go ahead and play this video. It's only 59 seconds. Let's play it.
Your staff were assaulted by police. What happened?
An anti-genocide demonstration where we were asked by students to come and participate and to stand with them as police really threatened them. And basically the police charged us, despite our efforts to de-escalate, they charged us. They basically used their bicycles as a weapon to push us onto our backs. And in my case, one of the officers actually lifted up one of my feet. You can see in some of this footage where I'm basically being thrown backwards, like onto my head. And I wiggled out of that assault and was told by the officer that I was assaulting him, which is a pretty preposterous proposition.
Have you been charged with anything?
Yes, I am being charged with assaulting a police officer. And I urge you to look at the footage to see what's actually going on there.
Now, we'll actually play a little bit more of this because this is what took place. This, again, happened on April 29th, 2024. Let's play it.
Hold the line now! Hold the line! 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 You get back. That's his foot. That's his foot. That's his foot. You get back.
So continuing on, let's read the rest of this. So again, looking at this for according to complaints against both Hicks and Stein during a series of unregistered demonstrations on Washington University Danforth campus, multiple protesters were arrested and several warnings were given, telling the demonstrators they were in violation of university policies and directing them to leave the campus. Demonstrations protesting the Danforth campus on April 20th, 2024 dispersed after police officers formed a line to approach them, the police officer's testimony said. A week later, on April 27, 2024, demonstrators gathered at Forest Park before blocking Sinker Avenue, marching north on Brookings Drive, sorry about that, and eventually entering campus. Some demonstrators had wagons containing supplies, an officer wrote, and the charging documents. The demonstrators loudly chanted phrases associated with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and drumming while on Danforth's campus. Well, that's what protesters do. I mean, controversial statement here. There should be nothing surprising about hearing protesters chant and talking. I mean, there you go. And also, I want to pull up another message here. People are saying, well, wait, we're in the videos that's showing Jill Stein doing this. Jackass said, I didn't see where she kicked him yet. Well, if we look at this video again, hold on, let's just go ahead and replay this video that we had earlier. Here's her giving commentary on this.
So, Dr. Stein, you say that you and your staff were assaulted by police. What happened?
An anti-genocide demonstration where we were asked by students to come and participate and to stand with them as police really threatened them. And basically the police charged us, despite our efforts to de-escalate, they charged us. They basically used their bicycles as a weapon to push us onto our backs. And in my case, one of the officers actually lifted up one of my feet. You can see in some of this footage where I'm basically being thrown backwards, like onto my head. And I wiggled out of that assault and was told by the officer that I was assaulting him, which is a pretty preposterous proposition.
Have you been charged with anything?
Yes, I am being charged with assaulting a police officer. And I urge you to look at the footage to see what's actually going on there.
So that's the video in case you, everyone that's tuning in right now, missed out on it. That is Jill Stein commenting on the situation. Now, the thing is, look, nothing against nobody here, but I just don't see Jill Stein delivering, consecutive kicks that can cause real pain. All right, not judging anybody, but again, seeing as how she was being lifted up and she was probably also stuck on the bike. One could confuse her, maybe trying to get back on the ground. Maybe she was off the ground. I mean, there's a lot of speculation here, but in regards to assaulting anyone, it didn't look like she was going to be winning anything. It looked like the world's most one-sided fist fight caught on film, and she was clearly outmatched physically. So I think she was just more of in the air, and then, gee, how could we twist this even further? Again, we'll see what happens in the court. Because, again, there's a thing called due process. But I find this to be very suspicious that they're going after Jill Stein and all these other protesters. The future of free speech. What happens? A few minutes after demonstrators marched onto the campus, Washington University's Allen Library was locked down and evacuated after demonstrators were seen entering, the officer said, noting that final exams are scheduled to take place 2 days later on April 29th, 2024. Among those evacuating were students prepping for finals, the testimony said. Demonstrators gathered outside the library and erected tents. Minutes later, around 4:06 p.m., Washington University Associate Vice Chancellor, Dean of Students, Rob Wild, told demonstrators they were violating Washington University's demonstration and disruption policy, telling them to stop what they were doing and to leave campus, the officer wrote. Demonstrators ignored the warnings and yelled, F you, probably, to Rob Wild, and shame, 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 the officer's testimony said. Additional warnings were given to the demonstrators at 4:48 p.m., 5:13 p.m., and 7:26 p.m., according to the local time, informing them that failing to disperse would result in their arrest for trespass. The demonstrators did not stop, and some demonstrators entered several campus buildings, according to the testimony. At 7:41, the final warning was given to the demonstrators. And now here we go. I just want to play this. As officers were arresting demonstrators, telling them not to resist, Hicks spat on the lieutenant's face arm, shirts, and pants. Well, that is... So wait, Hicks spat 4 times on the face, arm, shirts, and pants? So he did did a Haktua 4 times on the face, arm, shirts, and that's listen, the Hakalugi, you gotta have a lot of saliva and stuff. I mean, maybe he took some time. One spit I could see happening, then 3, 4. I don't know. Suspicious. The lieutenant made eye contact with the defendant, who was seated and locking arms with other demonstrators. The officer wrote. The lieutenant asked him if he spat on her. Hicks responded by nodding his head up and down and began laughing. We're going to need to see camera footage of that. Ultimately, Hicks refused to cooperate with police and had to be carried away. The testimony goes on to say that Hicks refused to submit to officers, arresting him, taunting them in the process by yelling, "You almost got it. You got to do better, dog." Around the same time, Stein is accused of struggling over a different police officer's bike and kicking the officer during the struggle. Stein was released from jail around 2 o'clock a.m. in the morning, the day after her arrest, and she spoke on 5 on Your Side outside the St. Louis County Jail. So let's go ahead and play this video.
When you're coming out, how long were you in there for? What was it like when you were in the St. Louis County Jail?
It was kind of scary, to tell you the truth, because I got separated from the rest of the crowd, and it initially felt like there was a lot of safety in numbers, but then it turned out that I was being charged with assault after being assaulted by a bicycle and basically thrown onto my head backwards. I was charged with assaulting a police officer. Can you believe it? And so I got separated out, and I was alone going through this whole other process where I was going through a medical exam. I had, regular steel handcuffs put on and sat a long time sitting alone in a cell. And I had no idea. Did anybody even know I was there? I had been separated from my team. And, was I going to be there all night? Was I going to be there for a week? What's going on? When could I call my lawyer? So I was just completely led through this process, completely blind. And I'm really glad that, we got out. What time were we brought in? When did we get arrested? My guess is around 7:30, something like that. And finally got out at around 1:30 or 1:45, something like that.
All right, and that's what happened during that time. So unfortunately, as we are still covering this, it looks like Jill Stein will be in quite a little bit of a legal trouble. I'm pretty sure her website and her campaign site will, or at least her own social media accounts, will be informing us about what is happening. But she has given a response again, in case you guys haven't seen it already. It is very clear that our First Amendment right for free speech and the right to assemble is at risk. And if they could do this to a independent Green Party candidate, it is very clear that they could do it to anybody. Do I see Jill Stein as some aggressive agitator that was overpowering the police? No, I do not. I unless there is body cam footage showing her actively and purposely trying to cause harm, what I could summarize and theorize and speculate, in my opinion, is that while she was being lifted up, and I could see that maybe she was attached to that bicycle, her legs might have been trying to find ground. It's a natural reaction to any one of us that might have been taken off the ground or lifted up. We're trying to, it's a natural human response. As for the other individual, unless there's body cam footage showing him purposely, not once, not twice, but 3 times and 4 times, spitting on an officer and saying, "Come and get me," please, proof before the court. I want to see that evidence. Innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. There's always a thing called due process. Do I think that this is necessary? Do I think this is a waste of the court's time? Absolutely. This looks like something completely, and in my opinion, going to say this, looks completely frivolous, pointless, a waste of everybody's time and energy. Jill Stein and none of these protesters, should, especially if they didn't do anything, should be in any kind of courtroom whatsoever. But I'm more concerned about the right to assemble. And this should impact all of you and should concern all of you, especially those on the left and on the right to protest, the right to assemble, the right for free speech. I'm not asking for all of us to get along with each other. No, I don't believe in that. I know that's never going to happen. Never once in human history. No. But I am asking for the right for the First Amendment to be protected. And I'm getting a little scared here. So we're going to continue following through with this story. Hopefully nothing gets worse for Jill Stein. Hopefully she's able to get out of this and she's got a good legal team to help her get out of the same thing for the other person as well. But keep your heads on a swivel, folks, as you should.